Hello, everybody, and welcome to Kops Office Hours. Today is Friday, March 13th, 2020. I am your moderator, facilitator, Justin Santa Barbara. I work at Google. A reminder, this meeting is being recorded, will be put on the internet, and please be mindful of our code of conduct. And I pasted a link previously in the notes to the agenda. I will repaste it in case. Please do feel free to add things to the agenda if you would like to discuss them. Also feel free to add your name there. That can be helpful for people watching the video. And we have a fairly full agenda, so please do add your items there so we can be sure to get to them. And otherwise, I suggest, well, actually, I'm just trying to see if Hackman is here. He has the first item on the agenda, and I don't necessarily have a... Hackman, are you here, or are you just off my screen somewhere? I don't see him, so why don't we... Sorry, someone does see him or does not? No? Cool. I don't see him, so let's skip to Peter, your item, and then we can come back to Hackman's items if he shows up. Your item is about
so yes, etcd manager is tested with etcd 3.3.15, and it looks like etcd manager only has support for 3.3.1.13 instead of 15. And so this PR adds support for 3.3.15. I don't know what functional difference there is, but I figured it's best to have the exact version mentioned in the Kubernetes 1.16 release notes. So,
thank you. Yes, and we will. By the way, your audio is a little choppy. I don't know if that was the case for everyone else, so you may want to turn off your video for other things. But it was okay. I think we understood. I think yes, I think we probably need to do that. Thank you for sending that. It does. Eventually, we will decide etcd manager is too big, and we have to have a better strategy for how we like not bundle every etcd version into this massive etcd manager image. But as long as we do it gradually, we will like defer that indefinitely, I think. But yeah, I think unless anyone feels strongly otherwise, I think we should put that in the image and keep going. And if anyone has any good ideas about how not to how to avoid that, they would be gratefully received. I suspect our two choices are either to download etcd dynamically, which isn't great, or to have etcd manager spawn a pod or container that has the actual etcd in it. That's just a little bit more complicated. But in the meantime, we can merge that. Hackman, I see you are here now. Thank you. We skipped over your topics because we were waiting for you. Do you want to kick us off with your first one about experimental?
Hi, sorry being late. I forgot that you changed our a few weeks before us. Yeah. Kubernetes has, instead of experimental, feature flags. We have environment variables that do the same thing, but it's a bit different. Do we want to continue to having environment variables or feature flags or both?
Is there a specific example you have in mind? I think it's a very difficult question to answer in the general case, because I think the answer is likely to be that in some cases one of them is the right answer and in other cases another one. So is there one you had in mind?
So for example, right now in integration, it's pretty hard to test the launch templates. You would have to add another thing that would enable the environment variable to add an integration test for something. Also, for people that just want to use to experiment with the feature, it's pretty much annoying to just have an environment variable, and if you forgot to put it before the update, then you reverted everything or something, broke your cluster. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think there are some flags where I think it's okay. For example, or some feature flags where I think it's okay. For example, like we feature gate something, some cloud support, and we require an environment variable, but you only have to pass it on create. And I feel like that's more acceptable than the situation you described, where if at any time you forget to pass it to update, you're sort of in trouble. And that's where, like, I do agree that would be a good one to put into the cluster spec in some way so that you couldn't easily forget. But at the same time, maybe we could also make it look more like the first pattern, where you have to pass, we just enable the feature as a field in the spec, and if we want to feature gate it, you have to pass the flag only when you turn it on. But I guess on your 2 points,
The second one is related, I think.
oh, the next. Well, I mean, I saw just on the 2 points you made there. I was wondering, like, is it hard to pass an environment variable in the integration tests? Is there something we could do to make that easier?
Well, I think. Oh, sorry.
I have a PR that does that. It seemed to be fairly easy. I haven't actually seen if it works because it has to get merged first.
In theory, we could add it. I think with Peter's refactoring would be easier because it's not just that very long function call with all the parameters. Right now, if you want to add something, another parameter to integration, it's adding another parameter to one function and then adding it to all the calls, right?
I guess so, yeah. I was just wondering whether the environment variable was just sort of passed down in the environment, as it were. Like, but we can. The more interesting one is like for this, your second point about users, right? Like, and I wonder whether for the case of launch templates, which is, I guess, what this is about, whether we should try to pursue an option where you don't have to remember to pass it every time.
Well, it's more in line with what Kubernetes does. Like, let's say for some things, maybe, as you said, environment variables are better. But in general, if you want to enable a feature and really test it so that you can give feedback, it's not very convenient to use environment variables all the time.
I think that's fair. I think the intent of the environment variable was just to give people a little check before they did something that was perhaps less supported. But it isn't that they should have to pass it all the time. So if we can get it, if we have a feature that we would otherwise be reluctant to introduce, if we can get it so that it only happens, so they only have to pass the environment variable in the create, I feel like that might be okay.
So the flip side or the downside is that once it's in the spec, it's hard to get out of the spec.
Yes, we have to be double plus careful about the schema changes. So you might want to, experiment with it before you make it. Yeah, maybe we have like different phases, right? Like phase 1 is the uncomfortable environment variables everywhere phase, and then phase 2 is environment variable on create, but then we have a field.
Yeah, in the specific case of launch templates, I was thinking we would very quickly go to making that be the default, but it's a question of timing. But as I said, it's a minor issue. I'm willing for it to go in the spec if that's what other people want.
I don't have a problem either way, but I would prefer it to be either like a feature flag in, like for kubelet in our spec, or an instance group option or something. Because this feels to me like it will take probably until 1.18 or 1.19 to get it more stable.
I was thinking keep it feature flagged in 18 and then make it default in 19.
I don't have anything against making it a default, but we we have to actually check a lot of things. And as you saw in the PRs, it was made to work with mixed instances and not really as a separate thing to replace launch configuration. It works, but it wasn't tested. That path was just there. Probably almost no one is using it. For sure, Terraform and CloudFormation didn't work at all.
It sounds like we have a path. I think we're generally agreed that we should, if we introduce something with an environment variable you have to specify everywhere, that we should try to get it either to the default or to an environment variable with a flag that you only have to, with an environment variable you only have to remember at create, and that there's some sort of journey that will probably vary based on the feature and how we feel about it.
Yeah, like with every feature flag or in Kubernetes can be removed at any time without warning or.
Yeah, and we're a little nicer in that we ignore feature flags that aren't recognized. So I don't know if Kubernetes does that. But anyway, so like if we can remove feature flags once we enable the feature, which I don't know if Kubernetes does. But anyway, I feel like we have
we can print the warning.
Do we want a feature flag a field in our spec then?
It seems likely to. Well, I don't. You're talking about for the case of launch template, or?
Well, I'm thinking a particular field where people know that this stuff is likely to go away.
So I think once we introduce the field, we should have. So here's how I view it. We start with a environment variable we specify everywhere when we're very unconfident in the whole feature. We add a field when we are confident in the feature, but maybe like we know there are edge cases. Like maybe it doesn't work with CloudFormation, right? Or something like that. And we would then still have the feature flag, but only on create. And then we can also make it a default, or we can change the behavior and remove the feature flag in a future version. Like it's sort of, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be tied to the kops releases, as like Kubernetes is very strict about, like a sequence of releases. But I feel like that's the evolution of, that's the full evolution of a feature, and we can choose to skip some of those things, and we do choose to skip some of those things. But that would be that would be my mental model.
Sounds quite good to me.
And I feel like we should probably have a field for this one, but I don't know how people. I don't know whether I'll open up to like would people not use? Are there people that have use cases for not using launch templates? I guess would be the question.
I think.
Yeah, please.
I think long term, launch configurations are probably not going to be used. It's just, I think 18, we probably want to keep it feature flagged because it's had a lot of substantial changes. And then maybe in 19, we consider either feature flagging it or making it just the default.
The advantage of a field is that people that want to not make the change from launch configuration to launch template yet don't like have to face the choice of what to do, right? And we in the past have done things like make it the default for new clusters, the new value then default for new clusters. And we have also, I think, done things where we've said, posted increasingly severe warnings to people who are still using the old thing. We did that with like anonymous access. Can't remember who did that, but so in other words, really pushing you harder and harder to like make the change.
But this is sort of a decision to make when we get to 19, but it's just a question of what are the downsides to, what are the advantages of staying on launch configurations? I suspect they aren't many, but let's get some let's get some experience on configurations.
That sounds good.
So it seems like feature flag with it is the best option. For 118, we'll have it set as disabled, and we let people know that if they want to use the feature, they have to enable it. And we would like 119 to be enabled for new clusters, and at some point we decide to enable it for all. Once we test thoroughly that doesn't break anything.
I think closer to 119, we figure out what we want 119 to do.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that's a good outcome. I think, Hagman, is that both of your points, or is that most of the, is there anything left in the second one, I guess?
No, yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks. And I forgot about the time change. Yes, that was Sunday morning's pain, so it's already long forgotten by Friday. Okay, and Peter, we covered your item out of order about etcd manager and the etcd version. We decided to add it to etcd manager, and we are open to any suggestions on how to avoid adding every single version of etcd ever made in perpetuity, but we're not going to block on that. So next is John. You have an item about removing support for Calico. Yes, I saw this and I was like, I don't want to touch that without talking to other people. So
yeah, I wanted to bring it up in the meeting for sort of a last call, but yeah, there's been no movement from maintainers. It seems to be, substantially unmaintained these days. And so the proposal is when Kubernetes is 117 and higher, then you can't use the VXLAN flannel backend, and you also can't use Canal. I did this in API validation.
can you, what happened, I guess? Like, did they just stop? Maybe this is...
Yeah, you just get extremely slow behavior, apparently, or networking, as in...
But I mean, on the project, are people still working on it, or?
No, the flannel maintainer seems to have abandoned it. So there's no actual code changes going on.
Okay, and this is specific to Canal and not Flannel?
This is flannel, and Canal uses flannel.
Right.
Underneath it.
I guess I'm wondering, is this also, are we going to also have the same problem with Flannel plus VXLAN?
VXLAN works. It's just, or no, it's the VXLAN that doesn't work. That's
VXLAN across the board, kaput.
The other ones work.
I like VXLAN.
But VXLAN is the one that doesn't work, and Canal uses VXLAN flannel underneath. So
yeah, I had to move a cluster off of VXLAN flannel for that reason. We ran into this.
What did you move to?
The other config that flannel has, I can't remember what it's called.
Is it GRE?
John, maybe CC also Kashif on that issue. I know he uses Canal.
Hold on.
Perhaps we should suggest some migration instructions in the release notes.
UDP is the other one.
How does that work? Okay. That's user space, right? I don't know. Okay. I do worry that this is going to get fixed because someone is going to have a cluster they can't move or don't want to move.
Okay, it's been 2 weeks. I've seen just people talking about workarounds and no actual development. So,
hey Justin, do you have any contacts over there that we could reach out to?
On Team Flannel? No, I mean, I know people that at least used to work on it. I don't know, like, Flannel was a CoreOS project, or is a CoreOS project. And so they're now at Red Hat. I don't know.
Okay. You know everybody, so.
I can certainly, it's a good idea. And so, John, your proposal is to remove the support entirely.
For Kubernetes 117. So if you have an earlier Kubernetes, you still has the support. It's just that if you set a Kubernetes 117 or later, then API validation will say no, can't do.
Yeah,
Instead of giving you a broken cluster.
Yes, I agree. We shouldn't give you a totally broken cluster. I feel like this will likely get fixed, and maybe we can nudge
I'd rather see us throw like a warning up or something for now. And
Well, there's no way to give warnings, I believe.
I mean, we can give a warning. It's just it will be lost in the sea of
Yeah.
messages.
I will say that for a while there was zero movement on their repo. There was a couple merges commits yesterday actually. So to Justin's point, I mean, I don't know if anyone's putting money towards it. Let's be real. Like, I don't know if there's actually anyone who's being paid to commit to it. So I agree. I mean, I think we need to protect the user, but I also think that ripping it out completely might not be the best approach. But having run into it, like it flat out didn't work for me on 117.
We can always, if they ever fix it, we can always push out another 117, and they'll allow it back again.
Yes, but think about how people use kops. You may end up with someone in 6 months wanting a 117 update because they fixed something, and pretty much no one will do one.
Well, that's not strictly fair, but okay.
Well, it's not fair, but it's close to reality.
Okay, I will. John, I'm very conscious of the fact that I, in particular, have been slow to review your PRs, but I would ask that maybe we slow roll this one. Is that a fair?
Deferred decision for 2 weeks?
Yeah, and like figure out whether it should be a release note, figure out whether we can make progress on like.
Okay.
Yeah, flannel.
I'll hold it for another 2 weeks.
Thank you. Do you want to do you have the next one as well, which is also interesting, I think.
Yes, that is to, having seen tickets where people are using kops 115, run Kubernetes 1, or, basically using kops to like seriously down rev. It's like, don't let them do that, or at least make them go out of their way to do that.
Yes, and I think, so specifically, for example, kops 117 won't install Kubernetes 118. It will throw an error, and then I think there was a related, but I think that's the first one. And I think there's a secondary issue, which is I think much more minor, about how we should handle the alpha, like when they actually at some point in the cycle, which I think is addressed by your PR here. But I think we should focus more on the bigger issue, which is like, and then we can debate the nitpicking around, like, yeah. Like, so I think I'd ask other people, like, how do people feel about, so the current behavior in, I guess, 8700 is they would, if I tried to install Kubernetes 118 with kops 117, I would have to pass an environment variable. Is that correct?
Yes. Just like if you want to do run a version that is marked as unsupported in the channel.
Yes.
But we want to get rid of that once we start obsoleting them, right? So once we get to...
I don't know about that.
Yeah, there are like some versions we exclude, for example, because they had a security issue, but I think you can still like say, I know what I believe I know what I'm doing, and I want to run this version.
Okay, so the mechanism will still be there.
I believe so.
Is there any way to make it annoying just for releases? I know that Go has some way of passing some flags or something. Like when we do an official release, enable it just there.
I mean, it sounds technically possible. Tell me why.
Well, I think that's the second conversation.
Okay.
So I don't have anything against official releases doing that, but with unofficial releases, like what we build on our machines or something like alpha, beta, whatever, you may end up testing some feature in Kubernetes where we won't be always so fast like we are now with 118. So the thing that we just want, let's say, to make it easy for alpha or something could be a lot longer. So it would be annoying to pass environment variables to test various things. Also doesn't look that nice to start adding in tests lists of environment variables just so that we can actually test newer versions.
Well, we could relax the restriction to allow running the next alpha, but not the next beta or GA, or something like that.
So we do generally like the first idea, right? Like blocking. I think it sounds like a good idea to me. I think
sounds very okay.
Okay. And now we're quibbling the exact details of the environment variable or not. Or I do like the idea. I mean, we have I think we tag it as a CI build, and I do like the idea of using that to make it a little bit more relaxed, maybe. Or I don't particularly want users in a released version running we shouldn't exempt the alpha if it's a release version. That really is incentivizing the wrong behavior. Like if I want to run Kubernetes 119 with kops 118, I can do it, but only if I use the alpha 1 release. Seems like of Kubernetes feels like a risky. Oh, sorry. Were you saying which would we exempt on a kops alpha release or on a Kubernetes alpha release?
On a Kubernetes alpha.
Okay, yeah. That was almost concern. Yeah.
On the other hand, I'm a little bit wary of putting code that only ever gets exercised on official releases.
Yes, that's always scary. There are some missing numbers because of this problem. If you look back in the history of kops releases, there are some yep, that one doesn't exist, precisely because of this problem. Yeah. I think we don't need to put this, we could put the environment variable. I don't know how you did it. Did you put it in kubetest? John, you put it in each job. We could also put it in kubetest so we don't have to put it in each job, but I do quite like making it explicit.
Well, I also like the backports not having it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that is good.
Or we can make it a feature flag.
Well, it's equivalent to a feature flag as an environment variable.
I mean, yeah, it could be a feature flag. Yes, that's a whole different bike shed I don't even want to open. I think I don't have a strong feeling. I don't know if others have a strong feeling about. I like the idea of not putting in the PR that John sent 16678 to test infra, which makes it explicit that we are passing this envar. Doesn't seem too bad to me in terms of the burden, and it is good to me in terms of making it very explicit what we're doing, rather than my suggestion of putting it in kubetest where you'd be like, why is this not working? And then, we'd be like, oh, because there's this one line in this function that's 5 deep in the call stack that you forgot to think about.
I mean, developer could just put that environment variable in their .profile and be done with it, but.
Yes. There is also a .kops config file. I don't know whether feature flags can live in there. I can't remember, but we could certainly put that in there as well. But yeah, .profile is probably fine.
Okay, I think it's just me. No one else has a problem, so I'll just add an envar somewhere in my something, and I wouldn't see it.
Yeah, in your bash profile, and I think it would also be the kops config. It would be good to get that working a little better. I think right now we have to hard code the things we want to allow in there. So this might be one that we could put in there, but also it's not a disaster, in my opinion, to put it in your bash profile, right?
No, it's okay. Just don't maybe make it generic. Unfortunately, we cannot anymore to be also for older, newer, so that we don't get a whole bunch of such variables.
I mean, that is sort of the argument for a feature flag. John, thoughts?
Feature flag?
Putting it in putting it in the feature flag environment variable rather than its own one. I don't know how I feel about that, honestly.
I suppose that could work. I was following the pattern for dealing with
Deprecated, obsolete.
for obsoleted releases, but
It's okay. Let's do it like this, and if it's annoying, we will see later.
Okay.
yeah, if you put it in a feature flag, it makes it harder to just drop in your .profile and be done with it, because then you interact with the other feature flags.
Yes, I know that very well. Mistakes were made. Yes, okay. It sounds like that's a good compromise, so thank you, everyone, for talking that through and compromising. Thank you. And John, you have another item. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're doing okay. John, you have another item around 2 PRs that I think you would like to bubble up. And yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think, and one of them I think we wanted was targeted for 17. So I just reminding that we need to get the approval process running on those. Been sitting around for a while, and also there are the 2 down below of Cyprian's in the same state. So,
okay,
not much to say about those.
We can. I don't know if anyone has any comments on them that would be like a reason not to merge them type thing. Otherwise, I can certainly review and take a look and get them merged. Okay. Good. All right. Hackman. A to-do for kops 117. Firewall rules and Docker upgrade.
So I did some testing, and we have the node app firewall that doesn't really care where it puts the rules. In 117, for newer versions, we have IP tables NFT that also can work. Kubernetes tries to auto-detect it. I think doesn't do it very well right now. But we add rules always to the legacy table, and that can lead to unpredictable results.
Yeah, my understanding is if we add them to the legacy table, we force kubeproxy into legacy mode. I don't know what happens with other things like Calico, for example, if they set firewall rules.
No, because that actually wants 10 rules, 10 lines on IP table save. So we don't do anything to it. And before the proxy, I think it's the kubelet that does the kube firewall or something. And that always uses IP tables, whatever it's set to at the moment. So basically no auto detection at all.
Okay.
IP tables by default, it's an alternative to one of the 2, legacy or NFT, because kubelet starts first, add some rules with the default, then kubeproxy starts, finds out that kubelet already did some rules, and adds them where it finds in the table that has more rules.
Right. I'm wondering whether we should not be setting that IP table to run kubelet, whether we should be doing it somewhere else. I don't know if you have is there a tracking issue for this?
No, I just noticed it this morning. So anyway, I saw that our firewall is only needed, let's say, for Google, at least in the comments, says that's for the Google OS. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name right now.
Oh, for cause?
Yes.
Yeah, cause.
Don't have access to Google Cloud, so don't get a chance to play with it. So for sure, we could remove it completely for all other OSs, and let's say we reduce the problem. probably won't affect costs in this release. But I plan to open an issue with Kubernetes to see exactly what they were thinking and how they see it, how they see the auto detection work. Because pretty much all the projects are starting to pick up their algorithm and not sure if it will work.
Yeah, it doesn't work if it only works if everyone uses the same algorithm. Everyone has to cooperate. And I don't know how we break the tie in the first place. I think the tie, if there's a tie, we default to NFT, right?
No, actually the default is to legacy.
Okay, well.
And that's why it doesn't feel very auto-detective.
Yes. It's definitely worth that being an issue. I don't know whether it's better to do it in kops first so we can talk about it more specifically there, because within the Kubernetes project, there's always a debate of like, is this a Kubernetes issue or is it a distribution or like a distribution issue?
We could do it in kops. We already add those things. We just have to update the alternatives to fix. We could add something like IP tables backend in the spec, and we can try to set it to whatever is selected. And this way, Kubelet would probably choose what we set.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be great to get an issue on that, and then we can.
Okay, I will create an issue. I will also link it to Kubernetes in another one.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and see what, but this seems like some issue for 1.117 to figure out before the release.
Okay, I'll put that in the blockers for 117. Or yeah, I'll put that. I'll call it out in the release section. And do you want to talk about your the next one, which is about Docker upgrade?
Docker. So right now we have Docker 19.03.4 as the default for 117. Since then, there were some releases with various bug fixes, especially on containerd side. The question is, do we want to upgrade it to latest patch version?
What is the Kubernetes recommended version right now?
The Kubernetes, they tried as much as they could to get on the latest containerd that has the latest run C that fixes some issues. But for 117, I think maybe still 19.03.4. That was the release number that
was at the time. Yeah, I don't know whether we should try to update the 117 test jobs to use 19.03.8 and then change the recommendation.
My thinking was that it's a patch release. We would, in general, want to have the latest patch release.
Yes.
Also for Docker, even if at the time it was just a lower patch version.
It's that that is generally true. Docker has historically, in the past, that has been a more less of a safe decision. I don't know whether that's still true. So that like just Docker in particular. But yeah, we can certainly look at what's in 4 and 8 and see if what we think.
I know the main parts for containerd that they were just bug fixes. They had their own issues, but in general they were just fixes, not features. And Docker pretty much bumped the release with containerd, nothing extraordinary on the Docker side.
I think particularly if we're going to go with a different version than Kubernetes recommends, an issue would be super helpful here, just so we can like document what the changes are and why we're doing it. But then I think it sounds like a reasonable thing to do. I just want to, be very clear. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
And I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to try to drive us through the last items because I know they don't look small. But Peter, integration test refactoring options.
Yeah, so Hackman mentioned it earlier, but basically our integration tests currently have very long function signatures with many parameters, and anytime we need to add a new one, you add it to 20 different places and then get merge conflicts with other open PRs. And so I took a stab refactoring them so that we can more easily define default values for certain variables about tests. I used two different strategies, and I wasn't sure if anyone had a preference for one over the other. They're linked in that issue, but one of them uses chaining of functions, and then the other uses functional options and variadic arguments. So I don't have a preference, but if other people do, then I'd be happy to hear, and then we can move forward with one of them.
I'm just scrolling through the links. Thank you for doing it. And now my browser has decided to go on holiday. I likely don't have a strong preference. I don't know if anyone else has a preference. If not, I'd recommend whatever you, as the person who wrote the code and is more familiar, prefer.
Okay.
I don't actually see. Oh, I see the difference. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
I will flip a coin or something.
Okay. All right. Number one probably works better with autocomplete. That would be the only one I can probably imagine as being a potential deciding factor.
Yeah, that's true.
So to what extent do you want to use autocomplete? Did you ever get autocomplete working on your IDE? Or did you turn it off in anger when it was too slow? But yes, I think whatever you prefer, that both look like a great improvement. So you, as the person closest to it, I think should make the call.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Timo and Shri. I hope I'm saying those right. But good. DigitalOcean. This is great. This sounds exciting.
Right. Hi, my name is Timo. I work at DigitalOcean, and Shri is on the call as well. Shri, should I try to make an introduction, or do you want to do it? I'm fine with either.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Timo.
Cool. All right. So yeah, Shri and I have been working on improving the DO support in kops for quite some time. And when I say we, it's actually Shri most of the time. So Shri has been since I think we started this last year, May or something around that time frame. Shri kind of volunteered to own the DO support in kops and has been working very diligently over the last couple of months, trying to fix bugs for the DO side of kops and just improving and extending the state of this the support. And I think we are right now in at a point where you can have I want to say almost working HA setup for kops on DO infrastructure. So yeah, I guess the reason why we jumped onto this call and a discussion we wanted to kick off was it's basically a question. It's a question of what are the requirements to get promoted to what we are now. Right now, DO is marked as the DO support is marked as alpha in kops. And I guess the question is, what do you folks think? What is necessary to potentially make that a promotion to beta? That's basically the discussion.
That's
And
great news. I can share like GCE is, I think it's in beta, but I think one of the things that I think we want are API stability. So you're not going to fundamentally change the API, and some idea that if I create a cluster today, then maybe when we go GA, I don't have to like tear it down and rebuild it. So in other words, that you basically have the right architecture or like configuration that doesn't require like a full rebuild. But those are, if it more or less works and it's not going to, and you're not painting users into a corner, then I think that is likely beta quality.
Gotcha. Cool. So I guess Sri can speak more to the fact of how stable our API is or the integration that we've done. He knows much more about the internals than me. I'm not sure, Sri, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So we've got a state where we added HCD manager support to Devo, and we also did the kops controller support. Then whatever is needed for the multi-master HA, the gossip seed support to add load balancers. So everything is in place now, and we tried to bring up the cluster using the normal documentation that's put in, and see that it comes up okay, and we're able to destroy the cluster as well with the related APIs. So that's the state we are in right now. So we just thought we will get here and figure out if that's okay or we need something more. Just thought we put it in the forum here.
It sounds great, and thank you for all your work. I'd say it wasn't clear whether you were saying that HA actually worked or not, but like that would be the sort of thing which we'd want to see it. You should have confidence that it works, so that we aren't saying, oh, if you want to have an HA cluster, you have to like rip it down and like recreate it because we forgot this thing, for example. But if we can get that, then I'd be very much in favor. I think it would be great to see this in 1.18. I don't know how your timelines sort of fit with those requirements, but if not, there's always 1.19, and it's great to see all this work. So thank you so much.
Sure, Justin. One thing which we tried was like we added this 3 master HA, and we brought 1 master down, and we saw that the lead election happened and it continued to work okay. One issue that we are looking into is, I know we see that implemented in AWS, where the issue is if one of the master goes down, it looks like the worker node gets into an not ready status. So it basically looks like we saw that there is a spec which says use the load balancer that's created even for the kubelets to communicate to the API server. So that is something which I see is only done in AWS side of it, using an use internal API for load balancer attribute. So we just wanted to check a little more about that.
Yes, I think I might know what this might be, which is, I think it might be related to this bug that I'm going to paste. See if this matches. HA issue related to bug. Which is like HTTP2 connections don't necessarily correctly reconnect. It's not clear to me entirely from this. I don't know. But yes, if you going through an internal load balancer feels like a reasonable thing to do to work around this. But AWS doesn't do that, so I don't know if AWS has the same issue. If there's an issue, if you can open an issue on it, then we can like try to figure it out and try to compare. But it would be great to like get that logged as an issue, and then we can fix it, and then we can say, and with that, DO goes to beta. I think that would be a great like sequence.
Sure, Justin. I'll put that, and I'll keep you updated on the Slack as well.
Awesome, thank you. And then one more issue left. We are going to hit time, I think, perfectly. Issue with the lift CNI, Matteo, an issue with the lift CNI.
Yeah, so we are moving to mixed instance group in now our autoscaling group in AWS, and the latest released version of the lift CNI has an hard-coded list of instances with the maximum number of ENI you can attach. So only 10 of our 28 selected instances were working correctly. So I sent an email to a couple of the maintainers. I'm going to open an issue in kops and an issue with Lyft to see if they can do a release, because someone switched completely to from the hard-coded list to a call to the AWS metadata to retrieve how many instances you can spin up. So I'll ask them to do a release so we can update the version in kops.
Sorry, that sounds great. Is there a metadata code now that we don't need to
Yes, so basically they removed a bunch of code with all the list of instance and DNIs, and now they retrieve them dynamically. So we'll see if this fix the issue on our side, and then if it works, we'll make a PR to kops to update it. But they need to make a release first, because at the moment everything is still master.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Is there anything we need to do other than watch out for your PRs?
If you know anyone in Lyft, ping them. Since apparently you know a lot of people. Yeah, no, I tried. Let's see if something doesn't move, maybe we can try to gently ask them if they can make a release.
Yeah, that sounds good.
No, I just wanted to make people aware if you're seeing something weird is because of that. We took us like some time to figure out why it was failing.
Awesome. Thank you, Matteo. It's good to know and good to share. All right, we have 5 minutes remaining. I carried forward the releases I failed to do for the upcoming 2 weeks, which actually aren't too bad. I was supposed to create the Buster AMIs. I'm going to continue to try to do that. And we previously had a 118 alpha. If anything came up, I don't know if anything, I didn't see anything came up in the past 2 weeks that warranted a 118 alpha. I don't know if anyone is now aware of anything that warrants another 118 alpha. Okay. And I put the blockers that we are aware of for 117.0. Please do, which are the 2 issues that Hackman brought up earlier around IP tables and around the Docker update. If you are aware of anything, I see John typing, please do add it. And also feel free to do so like after the meeting if something occurs to you or if you find anything, and then we can work towards getting 117.0 released. Yeah, it would be great to have 117.0 released, 118 beta when 118 actually lands, which can't be too far away now, though I have lost track of the official release date.
118 should be in 1-2 weeks, something. 24th, I think.
So we will try. It would be great. We'll be close. But yes, I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to add. Decision on 8614, which is around Canal and VXLAN, and 8582, which is around the default storage class. Yes. Other than that, I don't know if anyone else has any other topics, any other releases we should do, anything they want to discuss. All right, well, I wish everyone a very happy weekend. I hope everyone stays safe and healthy, and I will see everyone in 2 weeks.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, bye.
Bye-bye.